Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome inside the latest edition of Across the Cavs on Friday, December 8th. The Cavs are back in action against the Heat, hopefully avenging the blowout defeat right before everyone stuffed their faces with turkey and got ready for the in-season tournament. Talking about everything NBA from the in-season tournament to the Cavs. We're even going to be talking some Pistons. Yes, they might be 2-19, but they have a lot that they could possibly do to shape the rest of the league depending on what roster move they choose to make. He's Brett Usher. We're introducing him officially right after this on Across the Cavs on Network 216. All right, Brett, a pleasure to welcome you back to the show and for the chance to also finally get a couple of Cavs words. Last time they had just been knocked out. It was depressing around Cleveland and the area, but now they're relevant. There's great games around the league, and this NBA season has been incredible so far.
What's going on, man? Good to be talking with you again. I was actually just thinking about that. Like, when was the last time we talked? And that's when it was, huh? Right after they had lost in the playoffs. Huh? I couldn't remember if it was playoffs or regular season, but yeah, good to be back on with you again, man.
Yeah, and so far this season, folks, if you haven't checked the standings, I was amazed. 19 of 30 teams are 500 or better to this point in the year. And yes, that all 19 would qualify for at least a play-in spot, different over these last couple of years. And what we've had these last couple of days, which goes back to when the season began, Brett, is the in-season tournament. So before we break down the playoffs over the last couple of days, for you as a basketball enthusiast, if you don't know Brett Usher, he knows X's and O's brilliantly. Follow him on Twitter this very second it's at Usher NBA, correct?
That's correct.
Follow at Usher NBA, breaks down almost every team, X's and O's, game threads, game film. What are your thoughts on this tournament?
I think it's been a success. I think most basketball fans can agree on that. Look, going into it, I really wasn't sure what to expect. Like, first of all, I wasn't quite clear on how exactly it worked. And then once I kind of got the feel for that, it was like, okay, but are these games going to really feel like they mean something? Or what? You know, it's the first year doing it. Had no idea what to expect, but I think it's been great. Kind of figured it out as we went, which I think a lot of people did as well, where it was like, you know, like, I understand how it works, but just keeping track of like who's in what group and all that, was a little bit confusing, and I think only because it was the first year. But I think it was apparent from the jump, really, with this tournament that like these games mean more than a regular season game would at this stage of the season. And then that's just kind of increased as it's gone on to the point where this Final Four that we watched yesterday in Las Vegas, like, those felt like playoff games. It'd be different, you know, it's its own thing, but like almost like that level of intensity on the court, certainly among the players. I know the attendance wasn't great for the first half of that doubleheader, but you know, with the lighting that they had, you didn't really notice it too much watching. So you still got it definitely had a pretty intense feel to it. You could just see mostly just with the players, like they care. Like, this isn't your typical early December NBA game.
And obviously part of that first game is also 2 p.m. local. Most people in Vegas are working. You're not necessarily going to, unless you're a diehard fan of one of these two teams, you're probably not going to take off work to go watch unless you're planning to stay for both games. Because you're probably, the second game ended up starting at 6:30 because the first one ran a little over. Or sorry, not at 6:30 local time, not 6:30 Eastern time. For us, it was 9:30. But nonetheless, now, the big talk, Brett, not about the games, but about the courts, because some of them were okay, and then some of them, like the Pacers court, and I know they're just the hottest, the Nuggets court. Two-parter for you. The first part, do you think that we actually need these courts if they run this again next season? And two, would the games feel different if they didn't have these courts, or if maybe they just add a trophy instead of adding a whole special colorway? Because it's kind of, it was a lot.
Yeah, you mentioned Indiana and Denver. I think they were a couple of the most egregious. There was some that were just flat out ugly. But I like that they are doing different courts. So like, I would say for next year, like, my suggestion would be do different courts, you know, because I think that's important. I think that adds to these games feel different. I think the more things they can do to sort of signify it like that, just think, I think the better. So I actually think that was really cool. But I would say like redo most of the designs, if not all of them, just do them a different way. Like some of the ones that I thought looked really good were like Utah was kind of like this light purple, like not super saturated. Same with Minnesota, had like a light blue, not super saturated. And same with Atlanta, was also like a light blue. Like I think those, and they were like solid colors. They didn't have like the stripe through the middle. So I think those ones look the best personally, just the ones that are a solid color throughout, but they're not like overly saturated like that Denver court or something. So maybe go with those or something else. But I do think it's important to just signify that these games are different in every way possible, beyond just like the stakes that we know are at play.
And these games certainly felt special. You watched the first day of games, and Tyrese Halliburton was taking the Celtics to task on day one. The Bucks hung 146 on the Knicks on day two. Lakers and Suns right down to the wire. Some really good games. The Pelicans and Kings game had a lot of excitement. We saw the first time, I don't know if it's ever, you saw a crossover broadcast. I think it was more apparent on ESPN when they brought Reggie, since Doc Rivers is kind of getting back into announcing. I didn't notice a ton. Anything uniquely different of him working with the TNT crew. Obviously, LeBron going off was fun. But now that we have the finals, Brett, Tyrese Halliburton putting on 2 master classes. LeBron James putting up in the first game a line that hasn't been seen by a Laker since Magic back in 1987, which is just astounding, truthfully. And then in game 2, he looked – I don't know if we've ever really seen a game of LeBron doing this in 23 minutes, because normally he's very rarely on a healthy day going to play 23 minutes, yet they still win by 44 because the rookies came in at the end of the game and they held it down even more. So 133-89. Now, thoughts on the semis, and now that we're going to the finals, are you more excited to see Tyrese specifically or LeBron on this stage?
Oh, man. Well, I mean, first of all, that Lakers game last night, like LeBron was – I was just like laughing, like watching him. Like when he hit those 3 straight threes, I forget if that was in the first or the second quarter, but it was just like crazy. Like he just in the zone. And, yeah, I mean, nobody has ever put up 30 points, 5 rebounds, and 8 assists in under 23 minutes. He's the first guy in NBA history to do it. A stat I posted yesterday was he was also the first to score 30 on 95+% true shooting with 5 rebounds, 8 assists, and 0 turnovers. So, like, however you want to slice it, maybe he was the third for that one. But I'm getting all my crazy LeBron stats mixed up a little bit. But no matter what, just a super impressive performance. He looked unbelievably good, like truly unbelievable. Like, how is this possible? And yeah, they just beat down the Pels. But as far as that finals matchup, like, man, I am very excited. Like, I think this is arguably the most exciting matchup that could have come out of all this. Like when you think about the draws, I mean, LeBron is obviously, and the Lakers are obviously going to be a huge draw, especially with the way he's playing right now. I think everybody wants to watch as much LeBron as they can, and then the Pacers are just like this phenomenon with Halliburton and this high octane offense. Like he's become must watch. Like I've heard a lot of people just on Twitter and stuff say like, he's my favorite player to watch now. So just to get that, those two sides. And then when you look at sort of the contrast in their teams and their styles, the Pacers are certainly on the younger side. The Lakers are a little bit on the older side. And then just the way they play, the Pacers have the best offense in the league. The Lakers, not so much. Lakers are a great defense. Pacers, I think, bottom 2 in the league. So it's going to be pretty cool to see how all that shakes out. So it's a fun matchup, and I don't think you could have really asked for much of a better one, considering how the season's gone up until this point. These are the guys I want to see play for sure.
Oh, no. The Pacers have been such a fun team to see. Just watching them, I was very frustrated, Brett, when they were playing the Cavs in the early part of the season. I think this was the opening weekend. The Pacers hung, I think, 19 or 23s. The Cavs were up big and ended up getting destroyed. I'm like, oh, great. But I will also say that the Pacers were my 6th seed before the season started, which is probably my favorite prediction I made that's somewhat on par so far. But yet in the same sentence, the question was, who do I think the Cavs could have a good chance against in the first round definitively to advance? And they were the only team I could think of that would be a possible top 6. That wouldn't be a nightmare. Obviously, Tyrese doesn't turn the ball over. Obi's athletic. Neesmith is really coming into his own now that he's got his first big bag. Bruce Brown hasn't played up to his contract, but the leadership he's brought, I think, coming over from Denver and having those occasional 30-point or 25-point bursts can help. They kept Miles Turner, which honestly looks so brilliant right now because what he was asking out for years. And you see him on the podium with Tyrese. He looked comfortable. He seems happy. That team is full of energy. I think having a guy like TJ McConnell, he may not play every game, although I think Nembhard being hurt right now will change that, who can give them such nice spot minutes. And on the other side, the Lakers are really shorthanded. You think about their depth chart, and the bench outside, statistically speaking, outside of Reeves doesn't move it for me. But I think, and you'll agree with this, I'll go to you in a second, I think an athletic guy like Jackson Hayes just grabs some rebounds and throws some lobs with LeBron on the court can help. I think Vanderbilt's defense more than justifies his contract. I think Rui's going to get back into form. And they're 10-1, which is amazing because I don't want to get your thoughts on this first before we go into the Lakers and then switch to Cavs. They're 10-1 when Cam Reddish starts, and yet everyone clowned that signing. Everyone thought he was washed. He was done. But he might have actually been that missing piece that could have genuinely benefited them in that conference final series on the defensive end of the floor last season.
Yeah, without a doubt, he has provided a lot of that defense that they were missing. He's an athletic player. He's a young kid. He's a talented player. Maybe he's not going to be the offensive player that a lot of people expected him to be, that he was drafted to be, but I think he's found a nice role with them. And then, getting Rui Hachimura back after missing a few games is big for them. I think I've always felt he's an important part of what they've got there. And then getting Vanderbilt back as well. They're still missing Gabe Vincent. The Jackson Hayes thing's interesting. He kind of played more minutes than Christian Wood. That's always
these in a row for Wood.
Yeah, that's one where I'm like, I always was wondering before the season. I felt like it kind of had to be one or the other with those guys. And obviously they provide very different things, but I like the athleticism that Jackson Hayes brings. I think they've got a pretty solid bench when they're at full strength. Reeves has been playing better lately. That's obviously super important for them. But look, against Indy, and this is the case with Indy, you just cannot get complacent against this team. They will take that thing out of the net and just take off running. You know what I mean? Usually after a make, you can kind of relax for a second, but not against the Pacers. So any chance they get, even after a make, they are going full speed. And if you sleep for a second, it's probably going to be an easy bucket at the other end. The Lakers are a very disciplined team, a very smart team. LeBron's going to be on top of that, how to play against that style of team. So I like their chances in that one right there. But again, it's going to be a battle of this, speed versus, and the Lakers play with pace. They don't have the greatest offense, but they do like to run. So I think it's going to be a really entertaining game, but I like their chances in it.
Yeah. And now close out the in-season chat with a prediction. I'm going to go Indiana by somewhere between 3 and 5. It's going to go down to the wire. I don't think they're going to get blown out like the Pelicans. And I think that when push comes to shove, just the way Tyrese has played, and if they choose to double or they'll put one of their top defenders on him, let's not forget the shooters that they have outside. Buddy Hield can knock it down. Neesmith or Obi, whoever's closing out at the 4, can certainly knock it down. And Miles Turner can hopefully, for their sake, keep AD out of the paint to open up driving lanes every now and then. So I'll go Indiana by a slim margin.
All right, let me go Lakers by 10. I think the Lakers, you get them in a big game, a high stakes game. This is high stakes relative to what would normally be going on. But again, you saw it with LeBron. He cares about this. They care about this. Yeah, it is a lot of money, even for guys with a lot of money. So I just think when you put the Lakers in this kind of situation, they're always going to be so tough because of LeBron, because of AD, because of their experience. And unless they're completely overmatched like they were, against Denver last year in the playoffs. And even then they kept it as close as you could keep a 4-game sweep. But I just think the experience and the size is going to win out in this one. But of course, anything could happen. And, it's hard to count out Indy the way they've been scoring the ball. It's we'll give up a lot of points, but we're still going to score more. But I'll go Lakers. And
it should be fun. The game will be played at 8:30 tomorrow night. It's going to be weird with no games leading up to it, truthfully. But, I guess that's how you get the playoff feel, is you eliminate the other games in the schedule. That's my one qualm, is I wish we had more games on the schedule this week because, you know, Cavs will have their second and final game of the week. Then there's no games on Sunday. I don't see why the teams outside the tournament can't play Sunday, but we're not here for that. All right, Brett's got the Lakers by 10. I've got Indiana somewhere between 3 and 6. And now we pivot over to the Eastern Conference. Top 4 teams that stands: Boston, Milwaukee, Orlando, and Philly. To me, Orlando and Philly, not 2 I had pegged. Philadelphia traded Harden, got a real nice bevy of pieces. They have not the most talented, but maybe the deepest still wing position you see, because they brought in 4 wing players / forwards, Morris, KJ Martin, Nick Batum, and Rocco, just for James Harden. So that allowed them to solidify that. It allowed Max to become the point guard, and it gave them a solidified, really solid Maxey Melton 1-2. And for Orlando, who did just get beaten by the Cavs, Wagner brothers have been impressive. Paolo's taken another step forward, and even with Markelle Fultz out and Wendell Carter Jr. missing the last month, they found a way with Anthony Black and the addition of Goga from last season now certainly paying off. So the question here, Brett, is looking at these top 4 teams, do you see the Cavs potentially sneaking in and finishing ahead of any of them, and do you think they are better? And I know it's early. They're not better record-wise. Injuries have happened, but they've won 7 of 10 overall. Are they better than any of these teams in the top 4?
Yeah, I think they're probably better than Orlando. And it's not just based on that game the other day, which I did watch, and the Cavs looked great for the vast majority of that game, for probably 80% of that game. They really looked great. I was like, man, how does this team not have a better record? Because, I've only watched a few of their games so far this year, but just even aside from that, like, Orlando's a good team. I think they're a playoff team. I thought that before the season. I still do. I don't think they're the 2 or the 3 seed, or even necessarily the 4 seed in the East. Like, if I had to pick between them and Cleveland to get that 4 spot, if you told me it was going to be one of those 2 teams, I would say Cleveland. I just think with the Cavs, man, like, people forget how good they were last regular season. Like, I think that playoff loss, which, as bad as it was, to the Knicks, I just think that wiped that away from a lot of people's memories, that this team won 51 games. So they were a very strong 4 seed last year. They were the number 1 defense, of course, and they were also a top 10 offense, which is another thing I think people seem to forget about. So, I think they're much better than their record would show. It's been a little bit up and down, some of the shooting, but I think they've got a couple new pieces. They didn't really lose anybody, right? They just kind of added.
Yeah, traded Jetty and Lamar. That's really it.
Jetty and Lamar, but then you add Strus and Niang, so probably a net upgrade, certainly in terms of what they were looking for. So, yeah, I don't see why they can't be as good as they were last season, if not better, from here on out.
And now, what are your thoughts on Max Strus? Because his ability to – he started the year with a fantastic shooting game, then slipped up for a few, sitting close to, 38% of his threes. He's grabbing 6, 7, 8 rebounds a lot of nights. He's dishing out between 4 and 6 assists, which I really didn't see coming. To me, he adds a layer of toughness, the occasional athletic finish at the rim to get the crowd going. And the thing with him is he doesn't need the ball all game. He'll have a good quarter, as he had that 20-point quarter a week ago where he had 0 points the rest of the game, but still finished a huge net positive. I think Brady's come in. He's what they needed, just a confident shooter, a guy to move the ball as needed, make cuts, set hard screens from the 3 spot. And when you need somebody late in the game, I think he can be that veteran presence, even as a young guy coming from Miami, that they can use on the court in a big way.
Yeah, man, I'm a big fan of the fit there, and I'm becoming a big fan of Strus as a player. Like, he really does do a little bit of everything. I mean, he's not ever going to be like a lockdown defender, but he competes on that end. And you mentioned the passing, the rebounding, just a smart cutter, great shooter, obviously, probably even a better shooter than that 38% or whatever would indicate. But yeah, like, we might have talked about this the last time we talked on the episode, but like, if you had asked a Cavs fan or whatever last season, like, what do they need? Like, you would pretty much describe Max Strus, right? Like a tough, playoff experienced shooter that can do a little bit more than just that. But that's really what they needed. And he looked great against Orlando, especially in the first half. Like, I think it hasn't happened yet, but he's been a lot better the last few games. And I do think he's going to be like a game changer for the Cavs, just in what he provides as a shooter. And Niang, to a lesser extent, I think he's maybe a little bit more of a liability defensively, but he can obviously shoot the ball as well. And that's really what this team has needed. So, you know, people can talk about Strus's contract and all that. I don't think it's bad, especially with the value that he provides and sort of the void that he fills. So I think he's only going to get better, and the team's only going to get better too. He's an important player for them.
And on the Niang side, he's definitely improved a bit. You see the clunky floater at the beginning of the season was going nowhere near the basket. And now they're dropping. I think he's using his size well. I think Niang, there aren't that many guys in the league with a shooting ability like Niang that understand that they'll have their stretches, but it's not vital for them every game to have to shoot their shots, which the Cavs have never had that issue. I don't think Jetty was like that. Obviously, Omar was happy never shooting the ball when he was in those minutes. Glad he's in another good situation in Boston now. But I think that's important, Brett. When you look at some role players in the league, they don't always know what they're supposed to do. And the one name I just think of, I guess, and this is Marcus Morris from his time in LA. He is back in the Sixers rotation. I think he still has nice scoring value off the bench. But I think it is big for Niang to come in playing those 20 to 25 minutes, knowing he doesn't have to be, so that he'll do the other things. He'll get on Donovan as he did. Not that maybe we didn't all need to know about that. It didn't need to be written about, but it's cool that Niang is holding his former teammate accountable. Mitchell's like, I appreciate that he did that for me, for us. But I think him knowing his role also makes him equally valuable, and I think those two are those missing pieces when you get into the big games. If it comes down to a basket or a play or even just something a player notices that no one on last year's team would have.
Yeah, that stuff is super important. I think that's a big part of, you know, the appeal that they saw in bringing him in. So, yeah, I mean, they've got a lot more shooting than they had last year, you know, and they've still got a lot of that defense that was there as well. So I know, like, I think they're back. I think they're a top 10 defense as of right now. The offense is a little bit behind, but they've been really good overall, you know, the last 2 weeks or so. I think they've been maybe like 5th or 6th in net rating over that period. So like they're getting going. Yeah, I think I'm probably higher on them than most people.
I mean, love to hear that. Absolutely love to hear that. And to answer your previous, they are 8th in points allowed and 10th in defensive rating. So just inside the bottom part of that top 10. But you think about the importance of being a top 10 on either offense, defense, you'll always take it on the defensive side because the offense always has room to improve as you go. And so what we'll do now, we got 2 more quick segments. So I mentioned 19 teams currently with winning records right now. The worst team with a winning record in the East is the number 9 seeded Nets at 11-9, who have won 2 straight. In the West, the 10 seeded Houston Rockets half game up on the 10-11 Warriors for that final play-in spot. We still have 64 games. We're not making predictions on that. But Houston is just inside the top 10. Certainly a surprise depending on who you ask. The Spurs have lost 15 straight. The Pistons have lost 18 straight. The Wizards have only beaten the Pistons in their last 10 games. The Bulls without Zach LaVine have suddenly won 3 straight. So, Brett, 1 bold take from the East and 1 bold take from the West.
Okay. Let's see. From the West, this one's going to feel bold, I think, because of what happened yesterday. But I'm going to say Pelicans finished top 4 in the West. Yeah, I'm still really high on that team now that they're back to full health.
Except for Larry. Still need
Larry Nance, yeah.
He could be back up 5 when he comes back.
He's going to help for sure. Yeah, so they don't have everybody back yet. Just as everyone else was getting back, he got hurt again. But yeah, he's valuable for them in his role for sure. So, but yeah, I feel good about that team. I'm going to say top 4 in the West. These are not necessarily takes I would put a lot of money on, but they're things I believe could be possible that most people would. And then, did you want to do a West one, or do you want me to go to the East?
We'll go East. And my only other question for you on the Pelicans on that rotation. Yeah. So is Najee's back as well, right? Or did he also go down? Did Najee play yesterday?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay, so that said, Jordan Hawkins has not seen minutes, in 2 games now. Jose Alvarado seems to be leaning toward him as a closing point guard option for his defense. And Dyson Daniels, who had been starting while everyone else was out, is also kind of on the fringe. My only question for you, in that guard rotation, you're looking at everybody, who should be the odd man out in consistent minutes? I know you've been high on Jordan Hawkins. Dyson Daniels doesn't score, but he brings some other good things to the court. You can't bench Alvarado for obvious reasons. So which guard should kind of be on that outside? I guess it's between Daniels and Hawkins.
It's funny because they're so different. Like Daniels is all defense. He's a great defensive player. He really is. Like in terms of guard defenders, like he really is up there, in the league. And Hawkins, obviously, as a rookie, who's not the biggest guy, like he competes on that end, but he's not a plus defender, obviously, at this point. But he gives you the shooting. So, man, it's like it definitely is a cop-out answer, but I just think depending on matchup. And I agree, Jose's got to play, like you said. But I would say, if we're kind of distilling it down, simplifying it down to like it comes down to Daniels and Hawkins, which I think is fairly accurate. I really just think it's going to be matchup dependent. If you've got perimeter players that really need to be contained, if that's the priority, you go with Daniels. If you're struggling to score, if you need some more punch, like you bring in Hawkins, because that guy is a lights out shooter, no doubt about it. But they're just a very deep team. It's a good problem to have, but there's just going to be guys that don't play. There's no way you could play all those good players that they have. Yep. So, but that's one of the reasons I'm so high on them, is because of their depth. Like I think they can withstand injury, as we've seen. You don't want one of your main guys out. Even having a guy like Trey Murphy out hurts. But like with the rest of those guys, like you can plug in pretty much anybody, whether it's Najee or Daniels or Hawkins or Larry or Jose, any of those guys. So the depth is a strength of theirs for sure. Zion I'm not worried about him, but I'm a little frustrated by him. I think he could be better. It doesn't look like he's played his way into shape. No. As was expected. It was kind of like just this assumption, like, I'll give him till December. He's going to be, he'll be in shape, or he'll be in pretty good shape. It doesn't look like he's in any better shape than he was at the beginning of the season. Okay. If not, if anything, he might even be heavier. Yeah. But he's still great. He's still a very dangerous player. It's just frustrating because it's like he could be so much better if he was a little more explosive, was played a little bit harder, So that's a little bit of a concern. I hope he does get better as the season goes on and becomes the Zion that we want to see, because if that happens, then the sky's kind of the limit for that team. They're just not quite there yet.
And what about the Eastern Conference? What's that bold take?
Super bold here. Let's say the Bucks finish with the 1 seed. Maybe not super bold, but I just feel like the assumption has just kind of been it's the Celtics spot to lose. Like they're like a lock. They're by far the best team in the East. And I think I would still pick them to come out of the East. Like if the playoffs started today, that team's going to be very tough in the postseason. But in terms of like regular season record, I'm gonna go with the Bucks. Maybe when you look at their talent, it's not like a super hot take, but I don't think people are super high on them right now, and for good reason. Like they haven't looked great. They're 15-7, but they haven't looked great so far. I just think they're gonna get rolling at some point. I think they're a scary team when they do, and I think there's a chance they could get rolling to the extent that they do finish with the best record in the East. So that'd be like a pretty bold prediction for me, I would say.
And the fact that they're 15-7 with Bobby Portis playing the worst ball he has, and in his 4th season over there, been without Jay Crowder, who started the year really hot for the last couple of weeks. Pat Connaughton's been out of the lineup, and they only got Dame a month and a half, less than a month of the season starting. Right. So that's starting to come together. And I think they're going to probably make a trade of some kind for that bench. I don't know what that would be. I feel like they might make one. And when Malik Beasley is good, they're very hard to beat. He had an off day yesterday after hitting 6 threes against the Knicks. He'd been coming off his best 5-6 game stretch of the season. And people forget how effective he can be because of the playoff Lakers. We forget how good players are, Brett. Same with the Cavs in the first round. Similar to how Jared Vanderbilt lost a lot of minutes in the playoffs, you forget what his value really is when he was in Minnesota, when he was in that half season in Utah, when he was on the regular season Lakers. Just because a coach deems them not the best fit for that series, we forget that they're very good basketball players. I feel like that happens every single season with so many different guys. Yeah. And honestly, I think that's what it's going to come down to for a lot of these teams. I think the Bucks are going to be fine. I think Beasley is a good fit When they get Jay Crowder back, he can take his minutes. They can get some nice development, still opportunity for Andre Jackson. And I do agree. My preseason was actually, before these trades happened with Dame going to one of these teams, I had Milwaukee 1, Cleveland 2, Boston 3. Obviously, Boston usurped Cleveland in that. I never had a fully updated. Miami's been better than I expected them to be, certainly. Yeah. And Philly, I mean, all right, they're still scary. Their depth is real nice. The Pat Bev signing, I think, is helping them in the locker room, especially. I haven't heard anything about him and Embiid, but I'm sure he's keeping him honest. So all things considered, I'm confident about the Cavs still because it's a long season, but the East is better than we thought.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say this about the last thing about the Bucks. Like, just Giannis is playing some of the best basketball of his career. Like, that's a big thing for me. Like, he hasn't fallen off at all. He's playing MVP level basketball, no question. And yeah, him and Dame are still figuring it out. The one thing they need is a perimeter defender. They need one point of attack defender. Like, that's the thing with Beasley. He's a great shooter, great scorer. Same with Dame, but it's just this trade-off where, like, you're giving up a lot of defense by having those two out there together. So I don't know if Beauchamp can be that guy for them this year, like that kind of main perimeter defender, or if they're going to need to make a move to bring somebody in. I'm inclined to think they'll look to do that, and when they do, that could make a big difference for this team because you still have Giannis and Brook. You've still got two great big man defenders right there. So, like, I just think they're like one good perimeter defender away from being an average, if not above average defense. And that coupled with their offense, and then it's scary.
If you're a fan of another team in the East, you hope they don't get that. But if they do, it just only enhances what we're going to get in the playoffs. There's so much fun to be had right now within the NBA. You can look at any team. We do an episode on any team right now and instantly have a great time because the good teams and the bad teams, this felt like the longest offseason ever. I guess every offseason does, but it was so worth the wait, man. Since the first day, I've been enjoying every minute of the season. Haven't missed a second of the Cavs yet, which is a first to this point in the year. And just across the NBA, we've had so many good games, good teams, breakout players, crazy situations, too many fights, honestly. We don't need that in the NBA. Keep that for the other sports. And stop ejecting people, but we're not here for that either. But we do have to talk now about the worst team in the league just because they're a Central Division team like the Cavs, and they do have a couple of alums of Cleveland over on that team. So we're going to keep this short. We don't need to give great detail. We're going to go through every player on the Pistons, starting with the end of the bench, working up to the starters, Brett. And you got 5 choices. You can start, you can cut, you can bench, or you can trade. And we're not talking assets. I'm just curious what your thoughts, because I know you really know the X's and O's. You know how a lot of systems should work. I know you do a lot of research and watch a lot of threads. So we're going every player on the Pistons. What should we do?
One more time. The options are start, bench, cut, trade.
Correct.
Okay. All right.
So this depth chart looks whack. Okay. I need to know that. I'm going to go to the roster. We're not doing depth chart. We're doing roster because that's okay. James Wiseman. We'll go alphabetical order, reverse. James Wiseman.
I mean, I can't do this whole thing without a cut. So we'll start with cut and Wiseman. I'm just not a believer. I wish the kid the best. Just not a believer.
See you in Europe, big guy. Stanley Umude.
Stanley Umude? No, I'm just kidding. Let's keep him. Let's keep him as a role player. Yeah. No.
He's 2 years old. Wait, is this correct? He's 2 years older than Wiseman.
Yeah.
College is crazy, man.
Yeah. No, we keep Stanley around.
Asar Thompson.
Start.
Yeah. Isaiah Stewart.
Trade.
And I don't love his fit either. And he's still only 22.
It's just the fit. He has value, but it's just the fit, I think. I don't know that he can be your 4 there. So yeah, we'll trade him.
And his contract hasn't even kicked in yet. I think it starts next season.
Nice player. Good trade though.
Yeah. Marcus Sasser.
Bench, like 6th man.
Yeah, he can score for sure.
Yeah.
And Jared Rhoden.
Cut him.
No, it's fair. I like when guys from the Jersey schools. I like when you see a Seton Hall player in the league. Shout out to Mamu Kelishvili over on the Spurs. But he's not going to make it on a contending team. If they ever hope to be good, you got to get 1 to 15 at that level. Okay. Monte Morris still yet to play.
Bench. Really, like they've low key missed him. I think a lot. Like I bet you they had like a couple more wins, even if they just had him so far this season. So yeah, we'll keep him there on the bench. I think that's the type of guy you want on a team like this, and it's a shame he's been hurt.
Yeah, and they've lost 9 one-possession games during this long winning streak. So my favorite thing to look at when a team loses this many in a row, how many of them were close games? How many of them could have gone your way versus you just got blown out? And in half of these games, they competed. They almost beat the Bucks. I think I remember watching that game. They lost by 2. But all right, we're about halfway there. Okay, Isaiah Livers.
Cut. He's been terrible this year. I had high hopes for him. Just as a shooter that, hey, maybe he can do a little more than just that. He's young enough. But he's been so bad this season. And when you look at some of the other guys, like you hate to get rid of shooting on this team, but I'd just rather bring in somebody else.
Kevin Knox the second.
Man, let's bench him. Keep him around. Not that he's
had some good games.
He has. Yeah, we're gonna keep him around.
Jaden Ivey.
This is a tough one. This is definitely the toughest one. I like him. I'm going to say trade just because I would be very open to trading him for the right player. Because, look, I think you need to bring in another big time creator, to pair with Cade. He needs another guy.
Yep.
I'm not saying Ivy can't be that. But just with his size and stuff, I think ideally you'd maybe want somebody a little bit bigger, more of a natural 2 or wing. And I just think when you look at their team and the trade value that you need to be sending out to get somebody significant back, I don't know if Stewart or maybe one of these other guys we'll talk about would be enough to bring that in. You might have to move off Ivy to get the guy that you need. So I'm going to say trade just because I would be very open to offers for Ivy or maybe even putting him on the trade block and trying to bring in somebody that's just a little bit better of a fit, because I like him though. I don't want to sound like I'm down on him, and it's been a bummer he hasn't been playing more. It's been a really weird season for him so far, but God, that guy is fast. He's unbelievably, he blows me away every time I watch him.
Now there aren't that many good NBA mustaches left. He's trying to stay in the good grades.
He's got a great look. Yeah, he really does.
Great look. All right, so now as we go H to B alphabetically, we got all the fun names. Last couple minutes, we got Killian Hayes.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say bench him.
Yeah.
I'm not anti-Killian. He's done some good things. He's been all right the last couple years. He's never gonna live up to his draft spot. Probably, he's never gonna be a good scorer. Probably an efficient offensive player. But I like the way he defends. He's got a little playmaking. He's kind of he's only 22 still, I believe. So he's still kind of an interesting player to me, but just probably not as a starter. If he's your 7th, 8th man, I think you could do worse going forward. So I'm going to say bench Killian. Not that I wouldn't trade him, but I don't hate the idea of keeping him around.
Joey Buckets, aka my main man, Joe Harris.
Cavs alumni. There he is.
Oh yeah.
I think just keep him. I think his shooting could be valuable for that team. I just don't think at this point. Last year he was coming off an injury and he's barely played this year. He's 32, 33. I don't think he's got really any trade value. So I think your best bet with him is, hey, keep him around, get him healthy, use his spacing. He's a great shooter when he's healthy, but too valuable in that sense to cut, but not enough value to trade, and certainly not starting. So we'll bench Joey Buckets and hope he can kind of get right.
This man is unfortunately out 2 to 3 weeks, and I think this one should be a no-brainer. But Jalen Duren,
he's out 2 to 3 weeks. That's news to me. Darn. What a frustrating season it's been for him. Obviously, he's
2 weeks. 2 weeks. Officially 2 weeks.
I think he's their guy. I think he might be their highest upside player long term, and it's just been so frustrating because the first 3 games of the season he looked like an elite big man. He was putting up 18, 15, and 4 or 5 blocks, crazy efficiency, all that. Just looked dominant out there, especially defensively. And then the 4th game of the season against OKC, he hurts his ankle, and then he's just kind of in and out of the lineup from there on out. And then when he is playing, he just doesn't look like the same guy. Hasn't looked like the same guy. that we saw those first few games of the season, that pick and roll partner for Cade and also that defensive anchor. So he just needs to get right physically and be that guy that we saw at the beginning of the season. And that'll go a long way toward their success, even this season, but certainly long term. But yeah, he's as important, I think, as anybody on this team in the future. That's how I see it. Big fan of that kid.
Yeah, a lot of potential.
Oh my gosh, it's through the roof, man. I always say he's more of like, he was described as like a raw big coming into the league. I see him more as like a blank slate basketball player, like a guy that's going to be able to handle the ball, maybe shoot a little bit down the road. He's a really good passer. Like, just his development is going to be super important. And I hope they get it right. And he can stay healthy, but he's so young still. Just turned 20.
Yep. Young man. Cade Parker Cunningham.
I haven't sold any of my stock. So he's a start. He's part of the core. I see the core guys on this team as Cade, Usher, and Duren. It's like, just give me those three guys healthy with some shooting around them. That's like roughly on their timeline. Like, is that so much to ask? Because I feel like that you've got something if you've got that. And they just have the Duren's health and the lack of shooting, and Usher just being as good as he's been, just a rookie. They've got a little ways to go there. But yeah, Cade is as much a priority as anybody. Hasn't had the most efficient year, but like, if you watch the Pistons, like I'm not sure if he still is leading the league in field goal attempts, turnovers. It's just like super high usage, taking more shots than he wanted, taking shots he wouldn't normally be taking, just because they're so limited. He's had such little help really this season. So I don't think it's really fair to judge him. I mean, his counting stats are good, but it's just the efficiency's been pretty rough. And I think that's going to get a lot better when he's got that consistent pick and roll partner in Duren. So yeah, still high on Cade. He's not going to be Luka. I know people were talking about that, like when he was drafted, he's a Luka. He's Cade. Like, he's his own thing. But I think he needs that shooting, and he needs that pick and roll partner to really be at his best. So that's just, they need to get that stuff in place. But we believe in Cade. He's our franchise player. Start him, keep him, build around.
Malcolm Cazelan.
I'm just trying to think in my head. Like, I've already cut a couple guys. Has he been playing even?
No, he's on a two-way, and they haven't been injured enough to. I don't believe he's.
I was gonna say, I don't even think I've seen him on the court this year, but we'll keep him on that two-way bench.
He has one game under his belt. He played 3 minutes, no stats. He did the Tony Snell thing.
Okay, yeah, we'll keep him on that two-way for now till we maybe something better will come along.
All right, we got 3 names to rapid fire. I think two are obvious. So I'm going to go we'll go Alec Burks, my personal Alec Burks. Keep until the deadline and see what you want to do.
Yeah, I like that. I'm gonna say trade, but yeah, probably at the deadline. He's a nice player, but he's a guy that's got some value. That you could get a pick out of him maybe. I think he's a guy that a contender could want. Nice player, underrated. Kind of was injury stricken his first few years and kind of got off track. But he's nice. He always impresses me when I watch him. But he's a trade guy.
Could be a good Milwaukee Buck, low key. If you're only playing 15, 20 minutes, give him a couple of touches here and there. If you need to give Dame a blow and you want someone running it with Giannis and Middleton, who's confident shooter, can get to the foul line.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, and we got 2 names left to finish it out. Another interesting one. I have no idea. Bojan Bogdanovic.
Definitely a trade guy for me. I would have told you that last year too. Like, I couldn't believe they didn't trade him at last deadline. And look, I guess they just really want to put shooters around Cade, which I get. Like, they do need that. That's what I keep saying. Like, they need shooters. He's a great shooter.
34 too.
So he's not on their timeline, like, even remotely. So I guess if you want these young guys to kind of develop this season in like as healthy a basketball environment as possible, that's, I guess, the logic behind keeping him. But look, I think he's a guy that certainly has value, and they're 2-19. I mean, it's just, this is a tank season. And I say you gotta. It's just crazy hearing about some of the stuff that they reportedly declined for him, like first-round draft picks and stuff. And if somebody throws even a first at them for Bojan this year, I think they should definitely do it. So if I were running things, I would say trade, maybe at the deadline with Burks.
And the final name of the show, as everybody predicted, Marvin Bagley III.
Bagman. I'm gonna say like bench. Like I really like him as a bench big. Like I think he's way better than Wiseman. From what I've seen this year, he's been pretty solid. Again, not an NBA starter. I don't think will never live up to his draft position. I've said that about a couple of guys on this team already, but I like him as a bench big. Like I think he's having a little resurgence, and I think he's going to probably end up having a pretty long NBA career. It was looking bleak there for a little while, but yeah, we're gonna bench Bagley, but keep him around. I think he's maybe even on the higher end in terms of like a backup 5 or whatever.
An official final question, Brett. Then we're out of here. Cavs Heat, 8 p.m. Bam Adebayo out of the lineup. Who wins tonight's game?
Cavs.
Let's go, baby. That would get them to 13-9, be their 8th win in their last 11, and would certainly be good for the brand. But Brett Usher, a pleasure to talk basketball with you, and looking forward to when we do it again.
Yeah, likewise, man. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. You can find Brett Usher on Twitter at UsherNBA. Is there anywhere else we can find your basketball exploits, Brett?
That's pretty much it in terms of like social media platforms for the time being. You can also check out the podcast that I do with my homie Steve and producer Mikey. It's called The Overstated NBA Show. Feel free to give that a listen and subscribe if you feel so inclined. But just that and Twitter or X, I should say.
You can call it Twitter. We don't call it X.
It's going to take me a little while, man. It's going to take me a little while to get used to that.
All good. But Brett Usher, a pleasure to have you on, man, and we will talk again soon. All right, folks, that is the latest edition of Across the Cavs. We will see you again real soon, back on Monday with Bob Schwartz of the Fear the Fro podcast. Adios.